Hello and welcome to a very special sunny Govan Radio Hustings programme ahead of the local elections coming up on the 3rd of May. We have a live audience here at Kinning Park Parish Church in the heart of the community, just as Sunny Govan Radio is broadcasting to and from the heart of the community. We've got an exciting lineup tonight. Many of the candidates who are standing in Ward 5 are with me and with the audience this evening. Let me introduce you at home to the candidates who are here. Allison Hunter from the Scottish National Party, Farihad Thomas, the Scottish Labour Party, Chris Young, the Scottish Liberal Democrats, Finlay Archibald, the Pirate Party Scotland, Stephen Dornan, Glasgow First, Joyce Drummond, Solidarity, Jon Flanagan, Independent. We have apologies from two of the candidates, Alan Hughes of the Scottish Unionists and Harriet Murdoch of the Scottish Conservative and Unionist parties cannot be with us for this recording. So, that's the formal bit done at the start of the programme. Time now to listen to the people that are demanding to have your vote. So now let's hear from the candidates who want to get your vote on the 3rd of May. We've agreed amongst ourselves that we will speak alphabetically. So that means from this evening, our first speaker is Finlay Archibald, representing the Pirate Party Scotland. Finlay.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Cool. No. That's better. Hi, I'm Finlay. I'm the Pirate Party candidate for Govan. We're a relatively new political party. We exist, we campaign on issues of civil liberties and of transparency and accountability in politics. What we're wanting to do, if we can get a couple of councillors on the council, is look to, on transparency. We want to make sure that all council meetings and minutes are put online. We want to make sure that the arm's length external organisations which run many of your council services are brought back under council control and therefore transparent and accountable to the public. We want to have things like open data, so the council's spending plans, statistics and things like that are published online for people to be able to scrutinise. And basically our policy is anything that could be requested under freedom of made public. We also want to see, we've heard some good ideas coming up in this election campaign of things like community budgeting, so giving communities power over spending and giving them a real say. We want to take that step further really with something called liquid democracy, which is something which many pirate parties use internally for voting on policy, which basically would give every single person a vote, not just in an election like this, but throughout the term of the council on everyday council matters. On civil liberties, we want to reduce the proliferation of CCTV cameras. Britain's one of the most watched countries in the world in terms of CCTV cameras. We have 20% of the world's CCTV cameras for 1% of the world's population. The millions of pounds which are spent each year could be better invested in basic things like having more police on the street, for example, because CCTV in terms of crime prevention isn't as effective as traditional methods of community safety. And we also want to get Glasgow online, really bring down the digital divide. On the Digital Scotland report, which came out about a year ago, a bit over a year ago, there are places in Glasgow that up to 80% of people don't have access to the internet in their homes, and we want to make sure that that is universal. We want to see universal Wi-Fi throughout the city. I'm probably that's about 2 minutes, so I'll leave it there. Cheers.
Thank you, Finlay. Thank you very much indeed for getting us off to a great start this evening. Stephen Dornan now, who represents the Glasgow First. Stephen Dornan.
Okay, good evening. My name is Stephen Dornan. I am married with 3 children. I'm a Govanite. I've lived in Govan for some 54 years now. I know you find it difficult to believe by looking at me. I believe that local politics and indeed council elections should be about local issues and not about national issues. And Glasgow First was formed for that purpose, because we've got the Labour Party that seems to have deserted the Labour movement and has now been run from London and has turned into a machine. We have SNP who seem to have deserted independence and are now more interested in Devo Max. And what the fear for Glasgow First is that London will try to control Scotland through its powerhouse, which, let's face it, is not Edinburgh. I mean, that's our capital. But Glasgow is a powerhouse for Scotland. It's second to London in relation to destination venue. Holyrood won't control Glasgow to push forward this vote that's coming up in 2014, or is it? Is it going to be pushed forward by Westminster? So there you've got a fight between the two. But I don't want to see Glasgow being used as a tool by two powerful parties who have deserted their roots. I'm more interested in the people of Glasgow, and indeed the community that I at the moment represent, and with your support will continue to do that. So that's what I'm about Glasgow First, about local issues, listening to the people through going to community meetings, tenants associations, taking it back to the council and fighting for your bit of Glasgow and policies for Glasgow at committee. So that's just a short brief of what Glasgow First and indeed what I am all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. As we continue across the alphabet, we now invite Joyce Drummond, representing Solidarity, to make her opening remarks. Joyce.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Joyce Drummond and I'm the Solidarity candidate, which is Solidarity part of the Anti-Cuts Coalition, which basically we are campaigning for the eradication of poverty and the redistribution of wealth. We believe that budgets for the community, the local community, should be set based on the needs of that community. They shouldn't be set by a Lib Dem Conservative coalition up in Westminster. They shouldn't be set by an SNP government. They should, or by these people being dictated to that sit in Labour, the Labour-controlled Glasgow City Council at the moment. We believe that the budget, as I say, should be set for the community's needs. Glasgow City Council should use their reserves to fulfil their obligation to provide these needs, and if necessary, they have to defy orders from Holyrood and from Westminster to ensure that the needs of our community are met. Scotland is a rich country. If we had 10% of the money that was used to bail out the Royal Bank of Scotland invested into our services, there would be no need for cuts. I believe in taxing the millionaires and not penalising the poor. I was born in Govan and witnessed poverty at first hand, but also witnessed the fighting spirit of the people of Govan. I worked in the Southern General as a nurse for 20 years and I lived in Paisley Road West for 10 years. So I'm fairly accustomed to the problems that this community faces. Public services, I believe, should be brought into public ownership and therefore should not be run for profit, should be used to reinvest in the services that we need. I have already pledged my support to the NSPCC and to the Alzheimer's Society if elected. However, I don't see my role to be to prioritise between necessities. All necessities should be met. And I would really ask you to consider voting for me in these elections if you want to see the budget sorted out so that it meets the needs of the community and not dictated by the powers that be. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Let's move swiftly along the table to Jon Flanagan, your independent candidate. Jon.
Good evening, listeners, and I'd like to thank Sunny Govan Radio for holding the hustings tonight. My name is Jon Flanagan, and I have been the Labour Councillor for Govan from 1999 to 2003, 2003 to 2007, and from 2007 to the 3rd of May next week. I am standing as an independent candidate in this election. I live in the ward. I have spent all my time in the ward, and the issues that affect you affect me on a 24/7 basis because I am a resident. I do have concerns that are a number of candidates standing who have no local connection and do not know this area thoroughly. These are very tough economic times for all of us, and we need experienced and skilled councillors to be returned to bring Glasgow forward and to make sure that we cover all the disadvantages that this city has faced, that we challenge the injustice of the Conservative Liberal government, and we also challenge the SNP government who have failed to give Glasgow a fair deal in its budget allocation and have made cuts on a regular basis. I say I have a proven record on employability issues, and if re-elected, employability is one of the key issues that I would seek to address and work with community groups and others to make sure that we get as many people into jobs as possible. I have worked in Govan as a councillor and have been involved in bringing in £68 million to fund over 500 new houses in the Govan Ward, £6 million investment to the Pearce Institute, £3.9 million investment into the Govan Cross public realm area, and as planning convener I've been working closely with the Southern General Hospital as they go through their £842 million investment. As I said before, I became interested in politics to challenge the injustice that we face from Westminster and over recent years from Edinburgh, and I will work with local communities and local residents to ensure that we maximise employability and training opportunities for all. I have put a motion to the council to have a carers working group set up to deal with carers and families who have loved ones who are suffering from Alzheimer's. So
okay, I'm going to stop you there because we're going to play fair on this one from the beginning, and at 2 minutes 42 seconds, your time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Now let's hear opening statement from the Scottish National Party candidate, Allison Hunter. Allison.
Good evening, folks. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm the SNP candidate, and if I was to start telling you how much money the Scottish Government has put into Glasgow, that would take up my 2 minutes, so I'm not going to start, but just from the Southern General through to the Commonwealth Games, the lot. But this is about the council elections. It's about the people of Glasgow, and we're offering the people of Glasgow a manifesto based on the people's priorities. We consulted almost 20,000 people across Glasgow over the last 18 months, and our manifesto reflects what they told us. So we're offering open and transparent government to reconnect the people with the council. And we intend to, for instance, introduce a petitions committee that the council has to listen to. People wanted action on unemployment, especially amongst young folk. So we make a commitment to a guaranteed place in employment, education or training for all 16 to 24-year-olds who need it. In education, with the support of our colleagues in the Scottish Parliament, we'll be able to offer 600 hours of free nursery education for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Also, there will be a new focus on attainment in schools. We're proud of the excellent work done by our pupils and staff, but we can do even better. We must also improve school buildings where that is necessary. And we're making a commitment to getting the basics right. The streets swept, the bins emptied in time, and the potholes fixed. We'll take a zero-tolerance approach to the rubbish that's dumped in the streets and to dog fouling. And of course, we'll be guaranteeing the council tax freeze till 2016. In Govan we're standing 3 candidates, myself, Jonathan Mackey and Tahir Mohammed, all 3 making a commitment to serving the people of Govan to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Time now for the opening statement from Fariha Thomas, who is the candidate for the Scottish Labour Party here in Ward 5 of Glasgow. Fariha.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me along. As I say, my name is Fariha Thomas and I'm one of the 2 Labour candidates for Govan. My colleague James Adams also standing. I joined the Labour Party because I have a really strong commitment to equality and social justice, and that is what inspires me to be a Labour activist, what inspires me in all aspects of my life, my work in the voluntary sector, my charitable work, etc. I joined Labour during the Thatcher years when we were subject to a whole range of cuts, and I was really inspired by what was happening to fight back against that in the local government, both here in Scotland with Strathclyde Regional Council, which at the time had extremely progressive policies, but also the GLC and Sheffield councils who were coming up with imaginative ways to fight back. And for me, the times we are in now have major resonance. The reason I'm standing for the council now is because, yet again, we're fighting back against those cuts from Westminster, but also from the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government at Holyrood, who are passing on the majority of the cuts that reach them from Westminster to local authorities, and particularly to Glasgow, which has been faced by far higher cuts than any other local authority. I think Glasgow Labour has been very imaginative, and Jon Flanagan, for instance, has already referred to some of the major things that Labour has brought to Govan, and all thanks to councillors like Jon Flanagan and Stephen Dornan for the work they have done for the people of Govan in delivering those. Labour has been really imaginative in how it can cope with things during this time of recession, and I'm really proud to be a Labour candidate and to be able to drive forward the promises that we've got. For instance, in employment, Allison's mentioned employment, but Labour is already delivering apprenticeships and has come up with the innovative Commonwealth Jobs Fund, which subsidises employment for school leavers, graduates and over 50s, the most vulnerable people in the population. Thanks to that, we're not going to be facing the generations of unemployed people who came out of school, never got a job, never had a chance. And in Govan, we've got really high percentages of people, in poverty as a result of what happened in the Thatcher years. Okay, I'll be wrapping up. So in Glasgow last year, youth unemployment dropped. The rest of the Scotland, it soared, and that is partly thanks to Labour.
Thank you. Now, Chris Young, your candidate for the Scottish Liberal Democrats. Chris.
Good evening. I may not sound it, but I am also local. I live just up the road in Ibrox, Cessnock. We'll start again. Yes. Christian. Good evening. My name is Chris Young. I may not sound it, but I am another local here. I live just up the road, Ibrox, Cessnock Way. And I have for the last 8 years. And I'm a Liberal Democrat because I believe in liberalism, because I believe in democracy, and because I believe in environmental responsibility. And it's not just me as a one-man band, it's as part of a team. The Scottish Liberal Democrats, we have our manifesto for Glasgow on glasgowlibdems.org.uk for more details. And what I bring to the party is, I live here. I also have a background in law and administration, and I want to be able to do the boring things so you don't have to attend the meetings, to understand the documents, to hold people to account. And that's one of my major jobs, is holding people to account. Up until recently, Labour have run Glasgow with no accountability. The SNP now wants to take over running Glasgow with no accountability. And there's a real danger that will end up being run from Edinburgh in a similar way to Glasgow being run by shady rooms of Glaswegians. Not putting Glasgow first. Liberal Democrats, we've campaigned against local school closures, we've campaigned elsewhere in the city, and we were successful in stopping Labour's closures of post offices. I want to continue this campaigning work with local communities and be in part of the community to which I belong.
Thank you, Chris, and that wraps the opening statements. Have you all made up your minds yet? No comment, that's fine, because we want to hear from you as we go through this next period of the programme. I already have some questions that have been handed in to me, so I'd like to take one from the floor. This is from Margaret from Tea in the Pot. Margaret, good evening, thanks for coming along. Ash will come to you with the microphone, and do you have a question? Margaret has a question about the Govan Youth Project. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm a wee bit nervous, so you'll bear with me here. I want to find out how the candidates feel about the Govan Youth Integration Project. It's the only project in Govan for children, and 2 years ago it was slashed by 20%, its budget was slashed by 20%. And I'm looking for reassurances from whoever gets in the Govan Ward that they will fight to retain the JIP project in Govan, because these kids are all poor and most of them don't even know what it is to have a holiday. So the Youth Integration Project helps these kids during the summer holidays, during Easter breaks, to have a bit of social activity. And we don't want the kids running about the street. So that's my question to you. Will you provide that service for these children who badly need it?
Margaret, thanks for starting us off on that. So the question, will you provide this service for children? Let's start off with Chris Young. Chris, can you pick this one up?
Thank you. I'm afraid... Hang on. Let's pick something up anyway. We'll start again. I would like to know more. I confess it's not a project I know as much about as I want to. I've seen the premises many times, been intrigued by it, don't know as much as I want to know. There are many local projects. There are too many local people who are wanting to do things to know about all of them. But it's certainly something that we're fighting for against centralised decisions on which projects should be invested in, and that certainly, that in the context of the local community, you make a good case for that project. I mean, the chances of my being in charge of any purse strings are fairly slim. We're hoping to get Liberal Democrats elected across Glasgow, but we're not going to be the ones, realistically, who are going to be deciding which budgets.
Will you fight for them? That's what I'm asking. Will you fight for them?
Yeah.
The question from Margaret there, just to reiterate the question from Margaret, you're being asked is, will you fight for them? Even it seems to me as if you're throwing in the towel.
No, but I'm being realistic. I don't want to make promises that I can't deliver on. I'm an honest politician. I'm an honest person.
But if you did hold the purse strings, and if you were not one of these people in what you said, a smoky room, not putting Glasgow first, we ignore that comment. If you were holding the purse strings, are you going to help Margaret's project?
Yes, I mean, but I'll certainly look very favourably upon that. But I'm not going to make promises until I know more, and that would be irresponsible of me, because I don't know. I honestly don't know the project well enough to promise outright.
Thank you, Chris. Jon Flanagan.
Thank you. Yeah, Margaret. The Govan Youth Information Project, the summer programme, was established some years ago with my assistants at the time. The club previously had run from Rathlin Street Hall, and after the hall closed down after a fire, the Govan Youth Information Project took up the challenge, and it has grown into a great project, and the summer holiday period is an asset to Govan. And I chair the Pearce Institute as well, and the Pearce Institute gives a discount to the Govan Youth Information to allow them to use the halls in the summer, at Easter, in October. I've also been very supportive. The cut that you refer to was made by Community Planning Partnership 2 years ago, and it was for their core budget, which was slashed by 20%. I think they got 104,000 or 106,000 at the time, and it came down to 80 something. I have challenged that on numerous occasions in the council, and I would continue to challenge that, and I fully support the good work that they do, and I'll continue to do that.
Thanks, Jon. Ferryhat, what would you do?
I think it's an absolutely brilliant project. I would definitely fight for it. I've seen the difference it makes in children's lives, not just with the holiday programmes, but also the regular youth clubs and the ongoing work, all through the year. So yes, I would fight hard to retain the funding for it, because I think it's an excellent project.
Thank you. Allison.
I have a lot of admiration for the project. I've been to their Christmas shows, and I've been present at one or two of their activities, and I think they do tremendous work. And like Jon, I questioned the cut, but it seemed inevitable at the time, and but I would certainly fight not to cut it anymore.
Joyce Drummond.
Well, the short answer is yes. I would fight as an anti-cuts coalition member. I would fight not only to maintain the current provision that you have, but also to invest further into any community projects where there is need for it. I don't personally know the project, but anything that's going to encourage our youth off the streets and to focus on something more worthwhile is definitely worth fighting for. And I just don't accept the need for any cuts. That's my bottom line for all projects who are doing good in the community. There is no need for cuts.
But if you don't want to cut anywhere, where are you going to find the money to run anything?
Well, if we scrap Trident, if we stopped poking our noses into illegal wars, if we tax the billionaires and millionaires, we're a rich country, plenty of money.
But just a reminder, this is a Glasgow election, it's local authority.
This is a Glasgow election, yes. However, the budgets are determined by, first of all, Westminster, who tell the Scottish Government what to do, who then pass it on to the local government. And my reply would be no cuts. Remember the poll tax, people power does work.
A reminder at home and here in the hall, we have a question about the Govan Youth Project and whether it's going to continue. Stephen Dornan, what would you say?
In answer to the question, yes, indeed I would fight for the project. I convene the Govan Area Committee in the council, which Jon and Allison are members, and also Councillor Butt. We have, since that cut, which was recommended by the NHS, on the funding subgroup that took it back to the full Committee of Community Planning, we have funded it some £16,000 since then to try and at least put some sort of patch on that cut. I'm sure Stuart will inform me of that as well. My background is youth. Youth are our future. I've taught martial arts for 25 years, had to give it up because of spinal problems. Taught badminton, took Wayne's in youth exchanges, and the experience that you can give a child through sport and other countries, and indeed any kind of activity to get them doing anything other than stand about street corners, just fighting each other and tearing lumps at each other, is good, and I will continue to fight for that. Thank you.
Stephen, I just want to check one thing with you. All of our background is in youth, surely.
Yes.
We were all young ones.
Well, that would have been some birth if I were born at this age. Go to help my mammies.
Finally, on this point, Finlay Archibald.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably the youngest person on this panel, and I was a teenager not that long ago. When I was in high school, I was in the Air Cadets. So I realised just how important it is to be able to have things. We had holiday camps and sports and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of struggled in school. I didn't really like school, but having those evenings or weekends or holiday camps and such, it's so important. So yes, I would fight for that. Not only that though, Chris said he wouldn't be holding the budget strings. I don't want it to be the council that's making these decisions. I want these decisions to be made by people like you. And I don't think anyone here would vote to slash the budget of the youth project by 20%. So I don't see why the council should be able to do that.
Thank you all very much on that. Thank you. Let's take another question from the floor now. It's from Irene Lang from Ibrox. And this is a question about, good evening, and this is a question about refugees' protests at Brand Street. Irene Lang.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Given that the UK border agency in Brand Street is situated in this ward, what are the panel's thoughts on the forced destitution of refugees?
Thank you. What are the panel's thoughts on the forced destitution of refugees? Allison, let's start with you.
I got a letter describing the position of refugees from a lady just about a week ago, and it almost brought tears to my eyes. The fact that why people took over the contract from the council and now is going to Serco, and these people are being treated absolutely dreadfully. I see no reason why they should have been being put out on the streets. I think between churches and charities and perhaps even the council taking a hand in it, there should be able to provide a roof over the heads of these people until it is decided what their future is.
You say, Alison, there, perhaps even the council. That means that perhaps you might not do anything.
Yeah, I would be very happy if we were in administration to do so. Well, the council doesn't have houses. The houses don't belong to the council, they belong to the GHE. But the council could perhaps have some influence or rent some houses in order to give these people a roof over their heads.
Stephen Dermot.
Yeah, well, one of the things that the council does, have, that people maybe seem to forget is we are involved in housing, we are involved in strategic housing, so we actually do have meetings with housing officials, and it should be the case everybody deserves dignity and respect, regardless of where they're from. And my God, some of the stories that these people can tell you are absolutely horrendous. I do agree with everything that Alison says to make my answer a wee bit shorter, but there is things that the council can do in relation to housing and being involved in the associations, especially the GHA, which is the major housing investor.
The question that we have is from Irene Lang of Ibrox, and it's about refugee protests at Brand Street. Joyce Drummond.
The UKBA, situated in Brand Street, is a stain in Scotland's soul, I believe. The people who attend to sign on weekly have flown here, got here by hook or by crook, escaping from regimes where they're not guaranteed safety. They could be murdered, they could be raped. Some of these countries practice female genital mutilation. These people are here looking for sanctuary. And I support a couple of the local projects, the Glasgow Campaign to Welcome Refugees and the Unity Centre, who call on everyone to end not only the destitution of refugees, which I do believe the Council has a role to play in, but to go further and to end the dawn raids where children are dragged out of their beds, wetting themselves in terror, and also to end the forced deportations to countries that the Home Office themselves say that it is not safe for these people to return to.
Finlay Archibald.
I think it's... Thanks. I think it's absolutely terrible. I think, I mean, it's something that really bothers me about politics in the whole country is immigration policy. And it's especially the kind of, well, how do I say this? The kind of Daily Mail agenda when it comes to immigration politics. And this is just a kind of symptom of that. It's absolutely disgraceful. It's quite possibly, well, I think it's quite definitely illegal under human rights legislation, ECHR, that kind of thing. And I think, the point about housing, and I've heard, Allison mentioned Serco and GHA, and you have all these bodies which are split off providing public services, which are private companies or their arm's length organisation, and there's no accountability for when things like this happen. So, we need to stop this. It's like you said, it's awful.
Finlay, what is the Daily Mail agenda in Sunny Govan?
Well, well, I think the whole, I mentioned, this is a symptom of the attitudes towards immigration and to refugees and asylum seekers. It's always just kind of, I'll send them back, or, this. That was just something that frustrates me about
It's the same as the Daily Mail agenda in London,
yeah.
Or Manchester.
I was just making an observation about immigration policy in the whole of the UK, which is obviously decided at Westminster. But what I would do in Glasgow is to make sure that the bodies like mentioned, Serco and GHA, are accountable and are forced to obey the law, really, and provide the housing and human rights.
Chris Young.
There's one issue that was almost guaranteed to get me shouting at the television. It's the treatment of asylum seekers. How that word has come to be a term of abuse over the years is truly frightening. When we used to think of refugees as refugees and realise that they were running away from something and they had good reason, and that most people, if they're going to get here by hook or by crook, have done so in great adversity to escape even greater adversity. And I'm pleased that the Lib Dems have managed to advance things despite years of successive Conservative and Labour governments being dictated to by the right-wing press, as Finlay says. And today the Levinson inquiry is back in the news again, and that we can see that this agenda has been advanced by the right-wing press, and it makes it very difficult on the ground now to speak up for asylum seekers' rights. There aren't that many votes in doing that. But I'm pleased that we've ended child detention in Scotland. I'm pleased that we're making some progress. It's sad that we're not making more progress. When it comes to dealing with the mess that we're left and helping to safeguard the dignity of the people who have made it over here, let's not forget all the people who haven't made it over here who probably do deserve legal channels to get over here in the first place. But it comes to do all we can to protect, as we say, human dignity, and this is a prime Liberal issue about human rights, and I nail my colours to the mast, whether there are votes in it or not.
Fariha Thomas.
I think it's an absolute disgrace what is happening. It was bad enough when the contract to save some money was taken by central government away from Glasgow City Council, where there was resources in place to actually support asylum seekers and refugees, and a better quality of housing and support around that. Bad enough when that was transferred away and went to Y People, which at least is a voluntary organisation with some experience of working with people. Now it's going to Serco, who run detention centres. I mean, how scary is that? The people that are housing you are potentially the people that you're going to be moved into a detention centre with before you're deported. really scary for those who have to put up with that. And now why people are having to evict people because they don't have the resources to keep them in place. And actually that isn't really, I mean, I can see why people are in that situation, but it's completely wrong and it needs to be challenged. There are a lot of voluntary organisations around, particularly in Govan with the Integration Network, which is working hard and is hosting the Destitution Network, but also Positive Action in Housing, which has its system of volunteers who house asylum seekers and refugees who have been made destitute. But it shouldn't be left to the voluntary sector, and we do need to look. The council needs to be looking at what else can be done. I think the council have been quite imaginative in dealing with a lot of central government policies and coming up with other ways, and we need to do something around asylum seekers as well.
Jon Flanagan.
Yeah, I have been to Dungavel Immigration Removal Centre, and I've heard first-hand from asylum seekers and listened to their fear of the future when they have been dragged away and locked up in Dungavel waiting for removal out of the country. And it is a very frightening experience for them, and I have discussed it with them. I have acted for some of them, and represented them, people from this area. It is a very frightening experience. Now those people who are being housed by Y people are facing eviction and no support, and they're going, as Faria says, to Serco. Serco is a large multinational company, and I do not think that they will give the service that they would get from Y people or Glasgow City Council. I got a letter just like Allison, and I have raised this with the Chief Executive of Glasgow City Council. The council is now sort of too removed from it, but we are a large social organisation, we are the community, and I believe, and I have raised this with the Chief Executive, that we need to do more and we need to intervene in this case. And that's what I will be fighting for, council intervention.
Thank you all. Now, can I kindly ask the candidates here to perhaps have a little more brevity as we go through the next few questions, please. And a reminder to you at home, you're listening to a special programme. This is the sunny Govan Hustings. It's coming to you from Kinning Park Parish Church, a grand church right here in the centre of the community, and of course, great people here taking part in this special programme this evening. Now, we move on to another question from the floor, and this is from Raymond Ramsey of Linthouse. And this, Raymond, is a question about unemployment.
Hi there, my question to the panel is, I come from one house where I'm from one house, and my question to the panel is, what will happen and what can you do to try and help find people work in one house area hit hard by the recession?
Thank you. The question is, what are you going to do to help people get work in Linthouse? They're hit hard by the recession, by the economic downturn. What are you going to do? Stephen Dorrell.
In the moment you will see going up, will be erected by 2016 at Southern General Hospital. We have created, through government initiative, local employment there and apprenticeships. What we need to do is, there's 3,500 staff there just now, that will go up to about 10,500 to 11,000 staff. We need to make sure that those are local people, and local people get the jobs for that particular hospital. We also need to keep the money that they earn in our community, i.e. they spend it here, so as this community can grow, so that all the shop fronts that you see all shuttered up can then turn back into shops the way it used to be in Govan. So everything is a knock-on effect from somebody getting a job who can now spend money, shops to spend money in, but the big problem there is, just to digress, is parking. But I do take on your point about employment. We really need to make sure that employment for that hospital, first of all and foremost, is local.
It is important that you have parking, but people are looking for jobs as well.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned parking is because I've attended at least 40 community meetings about that particular subject. There is no parking facilities. I mean, there's no road network that meets the needs of that number of people travelling to that hospital for employment out with. Now, if those people came from Govan and its environment, i.e. the Greater Govan area, then they could easily get to the hospital and we wouldn't need to worry about the parking problem that we have just now. But you think about it just now, you go up to the hospital just now and look at the motors that are parked out there. You times that by 3,500 up to 10,500. So we seriously need to look at local employment and youth employment in that hospital. And we're doing that through Govan High School. We've got projects in there through South West Regeneration, working with the youth there to make sure that they get jobs. And you see a programme on the television called NCIS, all this scientific stuff about crime scene. There's actually a lab been built over in the hospital that does that. And we want youngsters doing that particular type of work. We want people to be nurses over there. We want them to be doctors. This is not about porters and cleaning a hospital. Our Waynes have got skills and the education attainment is far beyond what people think. So local employment, that'll do away with the problem in relation to parking. Thank you.
That's all right. I'm going to ask Raymond's question again, Stephen. What are you going to do about unemployment?
Fight for the people locally to get the jobs in the hospital. That's what my job is. And I do that. I chaired South West Regeneration project, which was formerly Govan Initiative. I set up a subcommittee of that and asked Ian Davis, the MP, to chair it, to make sure that the apprenticeships in relation to the build of that hospital were met locally, and where it could be met, because companies were travelling from England all over the place and saying, we can do this. But we then sat down with them and said, no, we want local people to work in that hospital. We want apprenticeships created through it, and we want a community payback clause where 100,000, 200,000 to be brought back into the community to build football pitches, help towards a sports centre, stuff like that. So there's big knock-on effects.
Jon Flanagan.
Thank you. We have to, as the Council, as a public organisation, make sure that we lead on investment for jobs, because the Tory government in London have cut, and that has had an impact on job creation. The Council, Glasgow City Council, has created the Commonwealth Job Fund. There's a Commonwealth Graduate Fund, and they are eagerly, there's also the Scottish Community Fund as well, which has created jobs. In the Pearce Institute, which I chair, we have doubled the workforce through public grants to employ young people. But there's a lot of people who are not getting into jobs at the moment, and we have to widen that attraction to jobs. The Southern General Hospital, yes, it does have a lot of opportunities, but it will not have opportunities unless we target training to local people so that they can take the jobs. Now, I have a scientific qualification. I was a research chemist at BP, and you will not get a job in a lab unless you have done training. And I believe that the Council, through the Glasgow Regeneration Agency, of which I'm a member on the board, needs to take up that challenge and make sure that the training is targeted to jobs. Silverburn Shopping Centre was a good example where the retail sector were told there's a big pool of people outside here who could work in that shopping centre, and that was very successful. But we need to go further than that now. We need to say, Southern General Hospital, what type of jobs you need? Here's our population. We'll now start training and start the courses locally. Because at the moment, people unemployed find it hard to get training, and they find it hard to travel to other parts of the city. If I'm re-elected, I will challenge the Council to make sure that we do make targeted approaches to job creation.
Allison Hunter.
In the interest of brevity, I agree.
Thank you, much appreciated.
I agree very much with what both Stephen and Jon have said, but I don't think the Southern General is going to answer all our problems. I think there are, other things we can take. Now, just following on from what Jon said, I think this, the colleges, when they're running courses, don't always look at what the outcomes are going to be, if the outcomes are going to lead to a job. There's no point in sending somebody to college if when they come out of it, they've got no skills to offer. There has to be a dedicated outcome so that they come out with skills that they can offer on the jobs market.
Thank you, Alison. That was taking up the view of brevity. I appreciate that. Finlay Archibald.
I think the Southern General is a big employer, so I don't think we can kind of ignore it. My cousin actually works in the Southern General, but he lives in Postle Park. I don't think we can just assume that everyone's going to be working down the road from where they live. Stephen mentioned parking spaces. You know, not everyone drives, and one thing that really, again, I think this is an issue that's not been brought up yet. The cost of public transport has gone up in the last few years a huge amount, and you know, people to get from one part of the city to the other part of the city to work, you know, that the cost of public transport needs to be brought down significantly. And the other thing was, Allison mentioned colleges. I think we need to make sure that you know, and Johnny mentioned people needing training to get jobs, especially, you know, with more high-tech jobs, and these are the jobs that are going to be the jobs of the future. We need to make sure that everyone can actually get into university or college or a training place. And if we're cutting budgets of colleges or asking colleges to merge, which would, you know, in some areas just mean the college disappears effectively. You know, that. So yeah, we need to. Yeah, I'll shut up now. Brevity.
Thank you very much, Barry Thomas.
Well, I would very much agree with what both John and Stephen have said, which are, of course, Labour policies which they have been very strong in promoting. So I completely agree with them around the job and about the importance of maximising the benefit to Govan in general and Lindhouse in particular, because it's right on the edge of it, of the Southern General development. But for Govan more generally as well, trying to ensure that the development in Pacific Quay isn't all about people coming across the bridge, but actually benefits the people of Govan as well. And I know that has been attempted before, but I think we need to keep working on that. To ensure that where we're bringing in resources to an area, we bring in employment which can go to local people. On the colleges, though, the sad thing is that there's major cuts from the SNP in college budgets, in FE college budgets. I don't agree with Alison that they're not tailoring them to need. I think colleges are very busy at trying to ensure that the education they're offering gives people qualifications that gives them employment and the useful skills that they can be using to progress in the future. And I think we really need to be fighting against the cuts to our FE colleges, such as Codonald, which make such a difference to local people.
Thank you. Chris Young.
There are two things. You've got to get jobs fit for people, and you've got to get people fit for jobs. In terms of creating more jobs, I particularly want to see investment in renewable energy technology and waste management technology. Those are big things I'm interested in, and Govan's in the right place to get the benefit of lots of that. It's got lots of the infrastructure there or adaptable for such things, and it would fill many of the holes that have been created by the loss of previous industries. Getting people fit for the jobs, it's rather a shame that the SNP government butchered Career Scotland, and that I know people that the system is recovering from top-down reorganisation, and it's not been in the best place to help people into work. And we also need to get the careers advice at school early, much earlier in the system, to make sure that people have an adequate view of what life is like, and to take control of their own education.
Joyce Drummond.
I think that we need to invest in our education system so that our children and youth are prepared for employment. I think additionally we need to stop cutting the services that are available to the youth in terms of regeneration projects, job centres, people to support them in their career choices, which are all suffering from cuts at the moment. And I think we should encourage our children to aspire to be what they can be. So that doesn't mean to settle for a menial minimum wage job. However, to enable them to do that, they have to invest money into their education, into university, and into support them through their further education. Again, I would call for all public everything to be brought back, public services into public ownership, where we're not privatising services who then cut the number of employees to boost their profits.
Thank you very much for that. I want to go back to our questioner, Raymond Ramsey. Raymond, you posed the question. Ash is bringing you the microphone. Do you feel better about your answers that you've had from across the panel? You asked about unemployment and what they were going to do. Do you feel better?
Yes, I do. Apart from that, I'm mentally qualified. I'm a qualified carer. I've been in the care for 5 years. It's not the lack of qualifications, it's the lack of actually opportunity to finding work. But I just stay next door to City in general, so yeah, that's a big help. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Raymond, thanks for taking part. Now, the Kinning Park complex is somewhere that's very close to many of our hearts. 16 years it's been on the go. Changes have been indicated there, and we have a question now about city properties, the deal, the effect on this community, and in particular on the Kinning Park complex. And this is a question from Lindsay Keenan. Lindsay.
Hello. Hello. Glasgow City Council a couple of years ago set up City Properties, a semi-private arm's length company, and handed it a chunk of the city's property portfolio in return for a £120 million loan. That seems to be in many ways a very bad deal for the citizens of Glasgow, and indeed I think the basic legality of it should be open to challenge. One of the key parts of that deal included changes to the concessionary rent policies being applied to over 200 community groups and charities in the city, effectively the imposition of a £2 million tax on those charities and community groups. For our own group, it means potentially up to £5,000 in upfront charges and potentially an additional £3,000 per year. Our community centre is self-managed. The council tried to close it 16 years ago and the local community stopped them by occupying it and now run the building themselves. So we generate all of our own income. We're not asking for funding, we're just asking not to be additional charges imposed upon us. So my question really is, if elected, would the candidates advocate for a review and amendment of both the city property deal and the concessionary rent policy? And then specifically, what would they do to support their complex and its ongoing negotiations with city property?
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Let's start with Farah Thomas.
Open to be looking at and reviewing. There's a difference between Kinning Park's situation and some other organisations which are in completely commercial properties. Kinning Park is in an old school building which has been an old community centre, and it is in a different situation. It's not a commercial property. But certainly, yes, I would be advocating to see what could be done to ensure that Kinning Park complex can continue to operate and isn't going to be penalised in a way that makes life impossible for it, and to try and simplify things and work with the other councillors elected in the area to try and come up with good solutions for that.
Jon Flanagan.
Okay, thank you. The city property has a large portfolio, obviously you mentioned. The concessionary policy that we had in the council was very good for local community groups, and it should not have been removed. And I also have concern that what's actually happening now is that city property are using private companies to market the property they have. And if a community group is trying to get a concession, they're not going direct to a council department. In the first stage, they're going to an outside organisation. That to me does not make sense, and I don't think it's best value for money. Now, I would be happy to continue to fight the corner of the Kinning Park complex. It is a community building, it is a community group, and it should have a proper concessionary rental. It should not be loaded with legal charges just to negotiate a concessionary rent. It does not make sense. It's different in the private sector where they have shops and commercial properties. But again, even there, in this day and age, that should be progressive. There should be an opportunity for people setting up a small business to rent those properties on a rent-free basis for a couple of years to get them started. And that's the type of thing we should be looking at to encourage employment and income generation in the city. I have serious concerns, and I will continue to raise them within the council if re-elected.
But John, didn't these changes come in on your watch?
They came in, yes, they came in under the Labour administration, but that doesn't mean that as a Labour member I accept everything that's been put forward. During that period I have challenged and I have asked questions, and I continue to ask questions. Obviously we work on, if you're in a group, in any political party, then it's worked on a collective basis whereby a vote is taken. But that doesn't mean you don't challenge it, and I've continued to challenge. And I've had meetings with the directors of the Development Regeneration Department and of City Property on these matters. Because this is just one example. There are others where I have other serious concerns.
Stephen Dorrell, it also came in on your watch, didn't it?
It certainly did. In actual fact, I was a member of City Property when we got £120 million, as you mentioned. That is the debt service to that is over £50 million a year. I think that's over 17 years. That's some return for the banks again. But the reason the council found themselves in that dilemma was because of lack of funding from the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government will then say it was Westminster. But we're here tonight to talk about you and the community. That is a problem because voluntary groups should be supported continually, because when you go into places like Kinning Park, you'll find it's full of youth groups. If you go and you pay up that children can't afford, then it's double or triple the price. So you yourselves are doing your best for this community where you're a tenant. So there should be concessionary rents, those should continue. I challenged that when I was on City Property, and you'll not be surprised to find out that I was taken off of City Property and replaced by two individuals, one of which was the business manager.
Is that because you're a challenging chap?
Well, I'll leave it up to your own thoughts, but I mean, I said, these are charities. Why would we do away with concessionary rents for charities? This has to be looked at over a longer period of time to find out indeed if the suggestion made by the officials is something that we can do or we want to do, whether the charities can afford it, because as John mentioned there are some charities that can afford to pay full rent, but in relation to Kinning Park, that's just out of the question. And there's hundreds of groups like Kinning Park where it is out of the question. They just cannot afford it. You can't get blood out of stone. You can't put 2 pints into one. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Joyce Drummond.
I believe ventures such as your own and other voluntary and charity organisations are providing a vital service to the community. I think you should be supported in that. I'm not sure why you don't get funding, whether it's through choice or whether it's not been available to you. However, I think the least that we can fight for is that we tax the billionaires, the big businesses, and leave charities, community groups and voluntary services paying as little as humanly possible, which in my opinion would be nothing.
Thanks, Joyce. Before I come to the other three candidates who are with us here, let's open this to the floor. Any comments so far on the comments you've heard? Yes, please. A microphone is on its way to you.
Just like to ask the candidates on for election that do you believe that when Glasgow City Council actually approached city building, it would be effective to say that our leaders went to our behest at loan shark, and would that be possible if any of the candidates here are elected next time?
Could you run that question again?
Sorry, it's not the level of the code.
Keep it down.
Okay. Do you believe that when Glasgow City Council signed a deal with city properties, it would be effective to say that someone acting on our behest effectively went to a loan shark, and now we're still paying for that? And do you think a similar event would occur should any of you be elected?
I'm uncertain of the question, to be perfectly honest. I'm sorry about that. It's me coming.
I think you were asking that. What you were saying is, do we think that they went to a loan shark and would we do that again? Is that basically what you're asking?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
I think that's... I'll answer. Obviously, the council at the time entered a deal to transfer the property into a new arm's length company, what they call Alio is the word that's used, but it's an arm's length external organisation of the council. And the money, I believe, came from Barclays, maybe Stephen will keep me right, but Barclays Bank were the lender. And I do have grave concerns about all of these large banks getting involved in these type of organisations. I would have preferred that we'd look at another model and hold the property within our own portfolio. I would be opposed, and I would continue, if this type of thing came up again, to be opposed to that.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments on that response before I come to the panel? Goodness me, hands raised all over. This young man in the front here.
In the community where the Hustings has been held tonight, our community centre was closed on the back of figures that were outdated, ignorant of the fact that it was actually growing in use, and closed by an administration that ignored a community that was united around wanting to save its community centre, and which now organisations like our community council now have no home to call its own. What do the candidates in the panel feel about the actions? How would the candidates have approached it? And for those who did, those who are current councillors, how did they vote in closing community centres in Glasgow?
Allison Hunter, why don't you pick that up? How did you vote in closing community centres in Glasgow?
Well, in actual fact, the Lawn Street Community Centre you're talking about, Kyle, it was run by Glasgow Life on behalf of the council, another arm's length organisation. And I fought against it. I'm a member of the board of Glasgow Life, and I argued against it very vehemently because I could see, I had a surgery there, I could see how well used it was, but to no avail. So it didn't go to the council, I don't think, for decision about closing. But I argued against it. As a Kinning Park complex, it really disturbs me the way that they're being treated. They've asked for virtually nothing from the council. And paying a peppercorn rent, whatever that amount might be. It's not costing the council anything to have Kinning Park Complex run. So they raise their own money, they do their own thing, they do fantastic activities, and why it should be in this position, I do not know. The SNP opposed the city property deal, and they opposed the change to the concessionary rents, but we were outvoted, and certainly is well worth a very deep review if we are elected.
Joyce Drummond, do you want to pick up on that for me?
I think I already spoke on that one.
But on the idea of community centres as this young man.
Oh, sorry.
Beg your pardon.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I think it's sad that when communities are standing together, then the politicians don't support them. I wasn't in the position of being a councillor at that time. I've been involved in community projects, and really, if I'm elected, I'm there to represent the people and listen to their voices and add my voice to theirs.
Thank you. Chris Young.
Alison Hunter says she doesn't know how we got into this situation. I know how we got into this situation because we started hiving off, because people in smoke-filled rooms. No, because the people who were elected decided to hive things off to arm's-length organisations. Yeah, indeed, not tremendously well. I mean, the Glasgow Life was the thin end of the wedge, and that we could have done with much more spirited opposition much earlier on about these things. And it's sad that the SNP, I don't think, campaigned sufficiently well on that issue. But I certainly was campaigning on that issue 5 years ago. And you know, the logical outcome was that more and more things have been hived off, and that the only way that these companies can make a profit, can get an income, is by trying to extort money from organisations. But of course that doesn't make sense. It makes no sense to price buildings out of use, to make them become derelict. That actually costs money. It's crazy. And the more you hive things off, the more you take them away for democratic responsibility, the less strategic thinking, the less joined-up thinking you get. The Liberal Democrat approach is to have more decisions taken at a local level. Lots of these decisions should be taken at the area level, shouldn't be taken by central council in the first place. And certainly shouldn't be taken by arm's length organisations with no accountability to the general public.
Chris, again, you make reference to a smoky room. I'm reminded of a perhaps very smoky room that led to a deal on the licence fee for the BBC. And that blocked the opportunity for any money to come from the licence fee to fine upstanding radio stations like sunny Govan Radio. No community radio stations getting money. That was Lib Dems in a smoky room, wasn't it?
Oh, well, it certainly wasn't me. I thought we were discussing the local elections.
You brought up smoky rooms several times.
Yeah, in the local Glasgow context. But if you want me to talk about broadcast things, then I'll give me the floor and I'll talk about them. But I've worked in local commercial radio in the past, and that many commercial stations started off as community stations. And that trying to encourage a diverse media environment is very important, and that tempering the BBC in some ways is also useful. That although many of the BBC the effective cuts from freezing the BBC, from freezing the licence fee, which benefits all of us licence payers by not having to pay more. But at least some of the knock-on effects of that is making sure that the BBC doesn't do more than it needs to, and that it has been guilty of treading on the toes of local radio stations and of the local press. I mean, not through any malice, but it's just the nature of the beast. That the BBC does lots of things, and that can.
Let's leave it there then. Let's park that one. A reminder that we are coming to you from the sunny Govan Hustings at Kinning Park Parish Church. I'd like to ask Farrah Thomas now to pick up again on the issue of the Kinning Park complex, raised by Lindsay Keenan, and concerns here. They're not asking for funding. They're not asking for funding. What they are actually asking for is a reverse of the policy on charges. Farrah.
Well, I think I've already answered this question, and I've said that I support the work of the Kinning Park complex. There's some excellent stuff going on there. People put in a lot of voluntary time and effort, and I really think they should be valued for the work that they do. I've also said that if I am elected, I believe there will be an ongoing review of the rent policy, and I would be pushing for that to happen. My background's in the voluntary sector. And I very, very much value the work of the voluntary sector, coming from that background and having worked in it and seeing all the brilliant work that goes on. So, I would be supporting a review, but I believe that there is an ongoing review of the policy anyway, and I would be pushing for that. And yes, for the differentiation between large charities who perhaps can't afford it, because charities can be things like absolutely immense nationwide organisations, and then there's the small local charities full of volunteers, and there does need to be differentiation there.
Indeed, you have answered it twice. Thank you very much. Please, Finlay.
I think again, it's coming back to this problem with arm's length organisations and the fact that they're not accountable or transparent. I mean, you mentioned backdated figures as well. It's a complete mess, and we need to bring them back under council control. The other thing I would add to that is what I mentioned about at the start about community budgeting and having these, having people in this room, like all of you, make these decisions instead of not even the council. Instead of it's Glasgow City Properties. I mean, we don't even elect them, so the whole arm's length organisations, just brevity. But I think we've covered everything.
You should come to Edinburgh and see arm's length organisations doing trams. Then again, no. We are going to have some more comments from the floor. Any comments or questions? About Liam's question?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Community halls
Hello?
Community halls are very close to my heart, and that's in fact that's where I met my wife.
Is that right?
I'm still answering the other.
All right, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go back. I actually met my wife as a volunteer when I worked in Invercray Commons all those years ago, doing the things that I'd mentioned earlier, karate, badminton, youth exchanges and whatever. Glasgow Life has to be reined back in again because they were made an arm's length company to go out and make money, to get contracts, or to deal with people that the council couldn't deal with for whatever reason. I'm not a lawyer and I don't know what some of those reasons were. But how they make their savings is by shutting down community complex. And then complexes, and then they go back and their figure sheet shows that they've made a saving. No, they haven't. All they've done is shut down facilities. They've not made any money that they were formed in the first place to do. And that they need to be investigated because they were set up to do that and they're failing in that task. And to cover it up, they're shutting down their community facilities. So they have to be reined back in again.
Thank you. Now, let's take a question from the floor. Can you give me your name as you start?
Name's Ian McInnes.
Hold the microphone.
1, 2, hello. Can you hear me now? That's it. Is that okay? As I say, my name's Ian McInnes and local community activist across the south side. As regards this issue of the community, the Kinning Park complex, it's completely symptomatic of this whole arm's length situation. And I would like to know if the panelists are willing to say it's time to go beyond collective responsibility when it comes to voting on issues of the ending of democracy and bring back a bit of democracy by getting rid of the what's it called again? The landlord in this case? City Properties and all the other arm's length companies in Glasgow, especially Glasgow Life, the most undemocratic one of the lot probably, which has falsified its accounts on the last year or the year before. That's easily provable, by the way. So I'm not sticking my neck right now. It's in plain in other words, will all the parties, especially SNP and Labour, and Jon Flanagan doesn't need to worry about that now because he's not bound by collective responsibility. Will they go beyond collective responsibility and if they find themselves in a minority, come together as an alliance to oppose this totally anti-democratic situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Let's go right along the table. Brevity, please. We are running very swiftly out of time, so very, very quick answer. Krishan.
I would like to get many of these things back into democratic control. Some of them it's going to be very difficult, and there are the reason Glasgow Life was set up in the process was to save lots of money which would otherwise go in tax centrally. I think that it's up to the SNP government in Edinburgh to start changing changing some of the ways in which these things are taxed, to remove the incentives for arm's length organisations.
Thank you. Good lesson in brevity for all of us as we go along the table. Joyce, please.
As I've already said tonight, I believe that all public services should be under public ownership. I would be happy to work with any other elected representatives to fight for that. So yes.
I agree with you. These companies should be reined back in again. I've already made that statement. But you need to remember one thing, and let's not let Holyrood escape this. The reason Glasgow and maybe other councils have went down this route was because of the massive cuts imposed in the Labour administration in Glasgow. Edinburgh didn't receive these cuts, funny enough, but Glasgow continually gets hit over the head.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about democracy, accountability, transparency. You know, we need to have all of these organisations just get rid of them. You know, bring them back under council control. I won't go on because I think it seems like every other question tonight has come back to Alios in some way. So I think, you know, it is a priority really to get this sorted out.
Allison Hunter.
The Scottish Government's allowances to councils are agreed with COSLA, and they're based on need. And when some people's money goes up because they need it more, other people's money drops a wee bit because they don't need it as much. And that's what happened in Glasgow. It wasn't a massive cut. It would be very difficult to just go into the council in administration and say, right, we're going to bring back the Alios back into public council control. There are a lot of difficulties there. There's finding the 121 million to pay back the debt for a start. I appreciate what you say, and some of them, yes, but I think there's difficulties.
Fariha Thomas. Fariha Thomas.
Well, I think Allison's outlined the fact that there are difficulties, there's legal implications and so on. What I would say is I think it's important that the roles of the Alios, and I think they're all different. I don't think you can just say Alios are Alios. Some may be doing actually a very positive job and some may not be. So I think they need to be, you know, reviewed and kept a constant monitoring of them. But I'm not in a position to say, yes, we should ban them all or whatever, because I don't really think that's actually feasible, as Allison's explained.
Jon Flanagan.
Yeah, city property is one of the, city building is one of the successful arm's length companies and has employed people, but we need to make all the arm's length companies more accountable as the start of a process of bringing them back in-house. And I'm very disappointed that Allison, who wants to run Glasgow in a few weeks' time, is saying that the cuts to Glasgow were not massive. This is a city in great need. To say that COSLA would allow, COSLA may agree, but Glasgow is a city with the most need in Scotland, and she says it's not massive cuts. This SNP should be standing up for Glasgow, and they're not doing it. I'm very disappointed to hear a statement like that tonight. If I'm elected, I will fight for this community and for the local groups and local organisations, but all cuts to Glasgow should not be just pushed aside as not massive. That is a terrible statement and must be taken further.
And talking of statements, we're coming to the end of our programme here from Kinning Park Parish Church. As at the beginning, we invited all of the candidates in alphabetical order to give a 2-minute opener. Now they have a no more than 1 minute closer. We go back to alphabetical order. So representing the Pirate Party, Finlay Archibald, 1 minute.
Right, well, thanks for coming, everyone, and listening to me and the other candidates. When you go to vote on the 3rd, one thing I would say is you get preferences, and I'd say, use them. I'm not going to say here, don't vote for me and don't vote for anyone else. Just keep in mind that you can potentially vote for everyone here, or some of us, or just one of us. It's up to you. What I'd like to do, a big priority, and I think it's come across quite a lot tonight, is this arm's length organisation nightmare. Allison has said that there's going to be huge difficulties if we want to do it, but I think we need to make sure that we do this, because if we don't, it's going to cost us more, and it's going to cause more problems, like what we've had with community centres being closed down. So that's probably one of the biggest priorities. And in terms of accountability, transparency, and democracy, this is what the Pirate Party is all about, and this is what I'd like to do if I could get elected, and make sure that. So I'm out of time as well. Vote Pirate.
Finlay, thank you. Stephen Dornan of Glasgow First.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm 17 years a councillor representing firstly Drummoyne when it was single-member wards, and now over the last 5 years, in total 17 years representing Govan. I think it's very important that when you represent an area, you live in it. What affects you affects me. You'll see it in the leaflets that go through the door. It's a statement I continually make because it is absolutely true. And you may want to, you've asked your questions tonight, but after we're finished, you may want to ask some of the candidates, is this a full-time job? Are they going to devote every hour of the day, working day, to being a councillor representing you? Are they going to go and do their job during the day? And if they can fit in the council work, that's what they'll do. I will not do that. I've not done it for 17 years. I will not do it if re-elected. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Joyce Drummond, representing Solidarity.
Solidarity is my party's name, and if elected I hope to stand in solidarity and be a voice for the people of this community. Right's right and wrong's wrong, and I hope to support and fight for the righting of the wrongs that have been done to this community. If you think that's impossible, remember the poll tax. People power righted that wrong, and we can do it again. Thank you.
Jon Flanagan, Independent.
Public service is a privilege and an honour, and I obviously thank the people of Govan who have put their faith in me in the past. I am seeking re-election. I am an experienced, hard-working constituency councillor, and I will represent the entire community if re-elected, and I'm asking for your #1 vote so that I can continue to fight for Govan and to represent Govan. I am a local resident. What affects you affects me, and I will fight, as I have always have, to improve this community and to improve the Govan Ward.
Allison Hunter of the Scottish National Party.
You have heard what I have offered in our manifesto, and I hope it has impressed you. Please vote SNP 1, 2 and 3 on the 3rd of May.
Barry Thomas of the Scottish Labour Party.
Glasgow Labour is committed to putting Glasgow first, contrary to what you may have been hearing from some of the other candidates. Well, we are putting Glasgow first. If I'm elected, I'm very much committed to working with local people, with local community organisations for the benefit of the people in the area, but also to working with other councillors in the area to have a common voice so that we can push forward the agenda for local people. Thank you.
And Chris Young of the Scottish Liberal Democrats.
I don't claim to know everything, but I will listen to anyone, and I will find out whatever it is I need to find out. I will understand whatever it is I need to understand. I have the skills to do the job, I have the time to do the job, I have the energy to do the job, to make a positive difference, and that difference will be sustainable, liberal and democratic.
And that's it from the sunny Govan Hustings at Kinning Park Parish Church. Thank you all very much indeed for coming this evening. My thanks to all of you on the panel who've agreed to participate, and you've taken part in good humour and good stead. Thank you all very much indeed. A vote of thanks from the floor. And to you listening, wherever you are, please remember the local election is on the 3rd of May. This has been a special broadcast on sunny Govan Radio. I'm Charles Fletcher. Good night.
Hello. Just a quick couple of thank yous before we head off for tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank all the candidates for turning up, and of course your lovely host, Charles Fletcher. What a good job he did. So thanks to Charles for that. Also, a big thank you to Kinning Park Parish Church, of course, and Marnie Johnston for letting us have this lovely room. I'll just run through these. Bob from City Strolls, who's been filming this event. We've got some live tweeters in the corner here. Kyle, Katie, Robert up the back. Big thanks to you. Steg on the sound desk and all the Sunny Govan volunteers that put in all the hard work. A big thank you to you too. And of course, a big thank you to all of you for turning up. It's a great turnout. I hope you found it useful, and thank you very much. Stay behind if you've got 10 minutes. Grab a cup of tea, meet the candidates, and meet some of your favourite Sunny Govan presenters. Thanks very much for coming.
Govan Hustings has been a success in terms of bringing people out. I think it's also been a success in terms of exposing most of the candidates as not listening to the people, because for the most part they did not answer the questions but rather gave the usual political evasion, and that's what we need to carry on doing. Keep the mics on, keep the cameras running.